The aircraft cabin fell silent as Zara Washington stood rigid, gripping her boarding pass while staring down at her assigned seat, now occupied by a smirking blonde woman who refused to move. Behind her, Zara's husband Isaiah's jaw tightened. Neither of them expected their anniversary trip would end with armed officers storming the plane. Before we dive into this shocking story, where are you watching from today? Hit that like button if you've ever experienced or witnessed discrimination while traveling, and subscribe to join our community fighting for equality. Now let's see how this anniversary trip turned into a fight for dignity. Zara Washington meticulously folded another blouse, tucking it into her carry-on with practiced precision. Her fingers, skilled from years of delicate pediatric surgeries, moved with purpose as she completed her packing. Across their Atlanta bedroom, her husband Isaiah double-checked their travel documents, his attorney's attention to detail evident in his methodical organization. "I still can't believe we're finally doing this," Zara said, zipping her suitcase closed. 10 years of marriage, and we're finally getting our Paris trip." Isaiah looked up from the passports with a warm smile. "Only took 3 reschedulings and about 1,000 surgeries." 2,000, at least, Zara laughed. The lightness in her voice masked the weight of the sacrifices they'd both made. Her position as one of the few black female pediatric surgeons at Atlanta Memorial Hospital came with immense responsibility. Emergency surgeries had derailed their anniversary plans twice before. "You think the Eiffel Towers waited long enough for us?" Isaiah asked, sliding their boarding passes into a leather portfolio. They had splurged on premium economy seats, a rare indulgence for the hard-working couple who typically saved their money for their future dreams of opening a community health clinic. "It better have," Zara replied, moving to stand beside him at their dresser. She picked up a framed photo of them on their wedding day, tracing the edge with her finger. "Remember how your mom said we'd never make it to 5 years? And here we are at 10, Isaiah said, kissing her temple. "Proving people wrong is what we do best." The alarm on Isaiah's phone chimed, signaling it was time to leave for the airport. As they carried their luggage downstairs, Isaiah noticed Zara's momentary hesitation at the door. "Something wrong?" he asked. Zara shook her head, but her expression told a different story. "Just thinking about the Montgomery incident." Isaiah's face darkened momentarily. Last year, during a connecting flight through Montgomery, a flight attendant had asked them to move from their first-class seats because another passenger had complained about feeling uncomfortable. The airline had later issued a hollow apology after Isaiah threatened legal action. "That won't happen again," Isaiah assured her, though uncertainty lingered in his voice. As a civil rights attorney who'd built his career fighting transportation discrimination cases, he knew better than most that progress came in fits and starts. "Things are changing," he added, squeezing her hand. "Slowly, but they are." Zara nodded, straightening her shoulders. "You're right. This is our time." The Uber ride to Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport was quick in the early morning traffic. Their driver, an older black man named Walter, brightened when he learned of their destination. "Paris. My wife and I went for our 40th anniversary," he shared. "Most beautiful week of our lives. You two enjoy every minute." The energy at the airport terminal buzzed with the usual mixture of excitement and stress. As they approached the check-in counter, Zara noticed the subtle shift in the attendant's expression. The momentary surprise quickly masked by professional courtesy when she saw their premium economy tickets. "Window and middle seat, 12A and 12B, the attendant confirmed, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. "You're aware that's premium seating?" "We're aware of what we purchased," Isaiah replied evenly, maintaining eye contact until the attendant looked down. "Of course, sir. Enjoy your flight." As they moved toward security, Zara squeezed Isaiah's hand. "Well, that was only mildly offensive." "Progress," Isaiah replied with a dry smile. Security presented its own set of familiar frustrations. Despite having TSA pre-check, Isaiah was pulled aside for random additional screening. Zara waited on the other side, watching the careful way her husband kept his expressions neutral as the agent patted him down. 12 years of random selections, Isaiah muttered when he finally joined her. I should play the lottery with those odds. They navigated to their gate, finding seats near the boarding area. Around them, other passengers for Air Transatlantic Flight 207 to Paris waited, families, business travelers, couples like themselves. Zara couldn't help but notice they were the only black couple in the premium seating area. Dr. and Mr. Washington. A flight attendant approached them with a warm smile. Her name tag read, Jasmine. I'll be serving your cabin today. Just wanted to welcome you aboard early. We're so glad to have you flying with us. The genuine warmth in the young black woman's greeting momentarily surprised them both. Thank you, Jasmine, Zara replied. We're looking forward to it. As Jasmine moved away to greet other passengers, Isaiah leaned closer to Zara. See? Things are changing. When the boarding announcement came, calling for premium passengers first, Zara and Isaiah gathered their carry-ons and stepped into line. They could feel several pairs of eyes tracking their movement, assessing their right to be in the priority boarding group. Ready for Paris? Isaiah whispered as they handed their boarding passes to the gate agent. More than ready, Zara replied, stepping into the jetway, determined that nothing would diminish the joy of this hard-earned trip. The familiar narrow confines of the airplane cabin greeted Zara and Isaiah as they stepped aboard. Jasmine stood near the entrance, offering that same genuine smile. Welcome aboard, she said. 12A and 12B are about halfway down on your right. Zara led the way, conscious of the eyes that tracked their movement through first class and into the premium economy section. She counted the rows silently. 8, 9, 10, 11. At row 12, she stopped abruptly, causing Isaiah to bump gently into her back. A blonde woman in her mid-40s sat comfortably in seat 12A, Zara's window seat, leafing through a luxury travel magazine. She wore expensive-looking athleisure wear and several glittering rings. The middle seat, 12B, remained empty, while a teenage boy sat in the aisle seat, absorbed in his gaming device. Excuse me, Zara said politely. I believe you might be in my seat. The woman didn't look up from her magazine. I always sit by the window, she replied dismissively, turning a page. Zara blinked, momentarily taken aback by the response. She reached into her purse and pulled out her boarding pass. There must be some confusion. My boarding pass says 12A, which is the window seat, Zara explained, her voice remaining level and professional, the same tone she used when explaining complex procedures to nervous parents at the hospital. The woman finally looked up, her eyes moving over Zara with a quick assessment that felt like a dismissal. I've been flying this route for years. I always get a window seat. Behind Zara, other passengers were beginning to queue in the narrow aisle, the flow of boarding interrupted by the standstill. I understand, but the seat assignments are specific, Zara persisted, extending her boarding pass. See? 12A is my assigned seat for this flight. The woman's expression hardened. You're being very aggressive, she said, raising her voice slightly. I'm not comfortable with how you're speaking to me. Isaiah stepped forward now, placing a gentle hand on Zara's shoulder. Is there a problem here? The woman's eyes darted between them, and her posture changed subtly. Your wife is being very rude about the seating arrangement. She emphasized, your wife, in a way that made Zara's skin prickle. My wife is simply requesting her assigned seat, Isaiah replied calmly. We booked these specific seats months ago for our anniversary trip. The woman pressed the flight attendant call button. I need some assistance, she announced loudly. Several nearby passengers turned to watch the developing situation. A male flight attendant in his 50s hurried over. His name tag read, Bradley. What seems to be the issue? He asked, his eyes immediately fixing on Isaiah as the presumed source of the problem. The blonde woman's demeanor instantly transformed. These people are harassing me about my seat, she said, her voice taking on a slight tremor. "I'm feeling very threatened." "We're not harassing anyone," Zara interjected, frustration finally edging into her voice. "This is my assigned seat. 12A, I have my boarding pass right here." Bradley glanced at the boarding pass, then at the woman in the seat. "Ma'am, do you have your boarding pass as well?" The woman began rummaging in her designer handbag. "Somewhere. I'm Karen Whitfield, by the way. My husband flies premium with this airline every month." Jasmine appeared beside Bradley, immediately assessing the situation. "Is everything all right here?" "Just a seating misunderstanding," Bradley replied quickly. "I'm handling it." Isaiah produced both his and Zara's boarding passes. "My wife is assigned to 12A, the window seat. I'm 12B, the middle. We booked these seats specifically." Bradley studied the passes, then looked at Karen, who was still searching through her bag. "Ma'am, what seat number is on your boarding pass?" "I always get a window seat," she repeated, avoiding the direct question. "Perhaps there's been a computer error," Bradley suggested. He turned to Zara and Isaiah. "Would you mind taking different seats? We have some available in row 15. "No," Isaiah said firmly. "We specifically booked these seats together for our anniversary trip months in advance. We paid for these exact seat assignments." The passengers behind them were growing restless. Someone a few rows back called out, "Come on, what's the holdup?" Jasmine stepped in. "Let me check the system to verify the assignments." She pulled out a tablet device and quickly tapped through several screens. "According to our system, 12A and 12B are indeed assigned to Mr. and Dr. Washington." Karen's face flushed. "Do you know who my husband is?" "Douglas Whitfield is a major investor in this airline. I'm not moving from my window seat. These people can sit elsewhere." She emphasized "these people" with unmistakable disdain. A murmur went through the nearby passengers. Some looked uncomfortable, while others nodded in agreement with Karen. "I don't care who your husband is," Zara said evenly. "That's my assigned seat." "Now you're threatening me," Karen said loudly, drawing more attention. "Bradley, I don't feel safe with these people next to me." Isaiah, recognizing the escalating situation, calmly took out his phone. "I'm going to record this interaction for everyone's protection," he said, drawing on his experience as an attorney. "You can't record me without my permission." Karen protested, her voice rising. "That's illegal." "Actually, in a public space," Isaiah began. "This isn't public, it's a private aircraft," Karen interrupted. "Put that away immediately." Several passengers had their phones out now, filming the confrontation. The aisle was completely blocked, and boarding had ground to a halt. "Dr. Washington, Mr. Washington," Jasmine said, "I apologize for this confusion. You are absolutely correct about your seat assignments." Bradley frowned at Jasmine. "Perhaps we could sort this out after completing boarding. We're delaying departure." "What needs to be sorted out is this woman needs to move to her assigned seat," Isaiah stated firmly. Karen suddenly reached toward Isaiah, grabbing for his phone. "Stop filming me." Isaiah stepped back, avoiding her grasp. "Please don't touch me or my property. He's threatening me." Karen cried out, though Isaiah hadn't moved toward her at all. Margaret, the head flight attendant, pushed her way forward through the crowded aisle. "What's going on here?" Bradley quickly spoke. "These passengers are having a disagreement over seating. I've suggested they take alternative seats in row 15 to expedite boarding." "That's not acceptable," Zara stated firmly. "We booked these specific seats months ago. There are assigned seats for this flight." Margaret turned to Zara and Isaiah with a practiced, patient expression. "I understand this is frustrating, but in the interest of getting everyone settled and departing on time, would you consider moving just for this flight? We could offer you a beverage voucher for your cooperation." Jasmine stepped closer to Margaret and spoke quietly. Margaret, I've checked the system. The Washingtons are correctly assigned to these seats. The other passenger hasn't produced her boarding pass yet. A white man a few rows back called out, "Just move to the other seat so we can take off." But a middle-aged Asian woman nearby countered, "They shouldn't have to move from their assigned seats. That's not right." The cabin was becoming increasingly tense. The captain had been notified of the boarding disruption, and the scheduled departure time was rapidly approaching. Karen's voice cut through the murmurs. "I am not sitting next to these people. They're being aggressive and making me uncomfortable." "No one is being aggressive except you," Zara replied, her patience wearing thin. Karen's eyes narrowed. "You people always make everything about race, don't you?" The cabin fell silent at the unmistakable implication. Isaiah's grip tightened on his phone, continuing to record. "I need to speak to whoever's in charge," Karen demanded, her voice cutting through the stunned silence that followed her thinly veiled racist comment. "Not this one," she added, dismissively gesturing toward Jasmine. "I'll get the lead flight attendant," Bradley said quickly, seeming eager to remove himself from the situation. While they waited, more passengers had their phones out, recording the confrontation. The aisle remained completely blocked, with increasingly frustrated travelers backed up all the way to the aircraft door. "You know what's happening here," a young black woman several rows back called out. "They have their assigned seats, and she refuses to move. It's not complicated." "Mind your own business," snapped an older white man near her. "Nobody asked you." The tension in the cabin was becoming palpable, dividing passengers into clear factions. Isaiah continued recording while maintaining a composed demeanor, his years of experience in tense courtroom situations serving him well. Zara stood beside him, her posture straight and dignified despite the humiliation of being forced to fight for what was rightfully hers. Margaret returned with Bradley, her expression severe. "Sir, ma'am, I understand there's a seating dispute." Before either Zara or Isaiah could respond, Karen interjected, "These people are harassing me about my seat. I've explained that I always sit by the window, but they won't leave me alone. I don't feel safe." "We have assigned seats," Isaiah stated firmly, showing both boarding passes again. 12A and 12B. "Your colleague Jasmine has already confirmed in your system that these seats belong to my wife and me." Margaret turned to Jasmine with a questioning look. "That's correct," Jasmine confirmed. "I verified in the system. Seats 12A and 12B are assigned to Dr. and Mr. Washington." "So what's the problem?" Margaret asked, looking at Karen. "Ma'am, could I see your boarding pass, please?" Karen continued rummaging through her bag without producing a boarding pass. "This is ridiculous. I know the CEO of this airline personally. Do you really want me to call him right now?" "Please do," Isaiah replied calmly. "I'm sure he'd be interested to know why his aircraft is delayed due to a passenger refusing to sit in their assigned seat." "You're being very aggressive," Karen said loudly, clearly playing to the audience of passengers. "I don't feel safe with him standing over me like this." Isaiah hadn't moved closer to her at all and was, in fact, standing several feet away in the aisle. "Ma'am," Margaret tried again, "I need to see your boarding pass to resolve this situation." "I've been flying with this airline for 20 years, Karen declared. "I shouldn't be treated this way. It's these people who should move." "These people?" Zara repeated, her voice steady but with an edge of steel. "What exactly do you mean by these people?" Karen's expression turned ugly. "You know exactly what I mean." A shocked murmur ran through the cabin. "That's enough," Margaret said firmly. "Ma'am, if you can't produce your boarding pass, I'll need to check the system myself." While Margaret checked her tablet, the captain's voice came over the intercom, "This is Captain Reynolds speaking. I've been informed of a situation delaying boarding. We need to resolve this quickly to maintain our departure slot. Flight attendants, please update me on the status." The pressure to resolve the situation intensified. Passengers were becoming increasingly agitated about the delay. Here's what I found, Margaret announced. Seat 12A is assigned to Dr. Washington. Seat 12B is assigned to Mr. Washington. She turned to Karen. Ma'am, according to our system, you're assigned to seat 17C, an aisle seat. That's not possible, Karen insisted. There must be a mistake in your system. The system doesn't make mistakes with seat assignments, Jasmine pointed out. Well, I'm not moving, Karen declared, crossing her arms. I always get a window seat. Isaiah, still recording, addressed Margaret directly. As you can confirm, my wife and I are in the right. This passenger is refusing to move from our assigned seats and is delaying the entire flight. What is the airline's policy in this situation? Margaret looked uncomfortable. We generally try to resolve seating conflicts amicably. There's nothing to resolve, Zara interrupted, her patience finally breaking. These are our assigned seats. She needs to move to her assigned seat. This isn't complicated. Karen suddenly pointed at Isaiah's phone. He can't record me. That's harassment. Before anyone could respond, she lunged forward, attempting to grab Isaiah's phone from his hand. In doing so, she knocked into Zara, who stumbled backward into another passenger. Don't touch my wife, Isaiah said firmly, moving to steady Zara. He's threatening me. Karen shrieked, though Isaiah had made no threatening movement. That's it, Margaret declared. Both parties need to calm down, or I'll be forced to remove everyone involved from this flight. Both parties? Isaiah echoed incredulously. We're standing in the aisle trying to access our assigned seats. We haven't done anything wrong. Jasmine pulled Margaret aside, speaking in urgent, hushed tones. Margaret, we can't remove passengers who are in the right and following all rules. That woman assaulted Dr. Washington just now, everyone saw it. This is becoming a serious situation. As they conferred, Karen pulled out her cell phone and made a call. Douglas? Yes, it's me. You won't believe what's happening. I'm being harassed by these people about my seat. Yes, on the Paris flight. The boarding process was now significantly delayed. Passengers stuck in the jetway were growing vocal about their frustration. Isaiah leaned closer to Zara. I'm texting Marcus, he whispered, referring to his law partner who specialized in airline discrimination cases. Zara nodded, watching Karen's animated phone conversation. She noticed the woman texting rapidly after hanging up, her expression smug. The standoff continued for several more minutes until the situation reached a breaking point when Karen, growing increasingly agitated by the scrutiny from other passengers, suddenly blurted out a racial slur just loud enough for those nearby to hear. The cabin went completely silent. The racial slur hung in the air like toxic smoke, poisoning the atmosphere of the aircraft cabin. Passengers nearby gasped audibly. Zara's face remained composed through years of practice, the same expression she maintained when facing subtle racism during medical school, residency, and even now as an attending surgeon. Isaiah's jaw tightened, but his eyes showed no surprise, only a weary recognition. What did you just say? Jasmine asked, her professional demeanor momentarily cracking. Karen's expression flickered between defiance and calculation. I didn't say anything, she replied, suddenly aware of the multiple phones recording her. The cockpit door opened, and Captain Elliot Reynolds emerged. Tall and imposing in his uniform, with silver hair and the confident bearing of thousands of flight hours, he surveyed the scene with practiced authority. What's the situation here? He asked, his voice carrying the expectation of immediate respect. Karen's entire demeanor transformed instantly. Her voice softened, her posture became more vulnerable, and she even managed to produce tears. Captain, I'm so relieved you're here. These people have been harassing me about my seat. I feel so threatened and unsafe. Have you ever witnessed someone completely change their behavior when authority arrives? Type "seen it" in the comments if you've experienced this kind of manipulation firsthand. And if you believe people should stand up against discrimination like Zara and Isaiah are doing, hit that like button right now. Captain Reynolds turned toward Zara and Isaiah. Sir, ma'am, what seems to be the problem? With the measured precision that had won him numerous court cases, Isaiah explained the situation, showing both their boarding passes. My wife and I are assigned seats 12A and 12B. This passenger is sitting in my wife's seat and refuses to move. She has not produced her own boarding pass despite multiple requests, and now she's escalated to using racial slurs. The captain's expression remained neutral. Ma'am, he addressed Karen, could I see your boarding pass, please? Karen's tears vanished as quickly as they had appeared. Do you know who I am, Captain Reynolds? My husband is Douglas Whitfield. A flicker of recognition crossed the captain's face. Douglas Whitfield of Whitfield Capital Partners, he asked. Karen smiled triumphantly. The very same. He's a major investor in your airline, as I'm sure you're aware. I see, Captain Reynolds replied, his expression unreadable. Zara and Isaiah exchanged glances. They'd encountered this scenario too many times before, the moment when power and privilege trumped fairness and policy. The captain turned away to consult quietly with his flight crew. Jasmine spoke earnestly, gesturing toward the Washingtons and then toward Karen. Bradley seemed to be arguing for the path of least resistance. Margaret looked torn. The delay was now approaching 30 minutes. Ground staff had communicated repeatedly that they were at risk of losing their departure slot. Other passengers were growing increasingly frustrated. This is ridiculous. Just move someone so we can take off. Why is this taking so long? I have a connection in Paris. Who cares who sits where? Just solve it. Isaiah used the moment to quickly message his law partner. Discrimination situation on Air Transatlantic 207. Recording everything. May need backup. Zara noticed Karen texting frantically, her expression alternating between smugness and anxiety. After several minutes, Captain Reynolds returned to address the situation. His face was grave as he approached Zara and Isaiah. Dr. and Mr. Washington, he began, I understand this is a difficult situation. In the interest of resolving this quickly and getting everyone to their destination, would you consider accepting seats in our first-class cabin for this flight? Do you think Zara and Isaiah should accept the first-class seats as a compromise? Comment, take the seats, if you think they should, or stand firm, if you believe they should insist on their original seats. This decision could change everything about how this situation unfolds. Isaiah exchanged a look with Zara before responding. Captain Reynolds, with all due respect, this isn't about the quality of seats. This is about principle. We booked specific seats months in advance. We're legally entitled to those seats. Moving us doesn't solve the actual problem here. Karen smiled triumphantly, clearly believing she'd won. I understand, Captain Reynolds nodded. Then, to everyone's surprise, he turned to Karen. Ma'am, may I see your boarding pass now, please? Karen's smile faltered. I told you who my husband is. Yes, ma'am, you did, the captain interrupted politely but firmly. And now I need to see your boarding pass. Airline policy requires all passengers to be able to produce their boarding documents upon request. Karen fumbled through her bag again, becoming increasingly flustered. It must be. I had it at the gate. Let me help clarify the situation, Captain Reynolds said. He took the tablet from Margaret and studied it for a moment. According to our system, seats 12A and 12B are indeed assigned to Dr. and Mr. Washington. MS. Whitfield, you appear to be assigned to seat 17C. I'm going to have to ask you to move to your assigned seat. Karen's face flushed red. This is outrageous. Do you know what my husband will do when he hears about this? Ma'am, your husband's relationship with the airline doesn't change our seating policies, Captain Reynolds stated firmly. Every passenger is required to sit in their assigned seat unless given explicit permission to change by our crew. I'm asking you to move to seat 17C immediately. I will not. Karen declared, gripping the armrests of seat 12A. I always get a window seat. This is discrimination against me as a loyal customer. Captain Reynolds' expression hardened slightly. Ma'am, I'm giving you one final opportunity to comply with crew instructions and move to your assigned seat. Failure to comply with crew instructions is a federal offense. Are you threatening me? Karen gasped theatrically. I'm informing you of the consequences of your actions, Captain Reynolds replied evenly. What will it be, Ms. Whitfield? Will you move to your assigned seat, or will you exit the aircraft? Neither. Karen snapped. I'm calling Douglas right now. He'll have your job for this. Captain Reynolds sighed and turned to his lead flight attendant. Margaret, please contact airport security. We have a non-compliant passenger. The cabin hummed with tension as passengers processed the captain's decision. Karen continued her theatrical performance, alternating between indignation and victimhood while furiously texting on her phone. Zara and Isaiah remained standing in the aisle, their carry-on luggage creating an unwitting barricade that prevented other passengers from moving forward. This will only take a few minutes, Captain Reynolds assured the increasingly restless cabin before returning to the cockpit to communicate with ground control. 15 minutes later, 2 airport security officers boarded the aircraft. The first was a tall black man in his 40s with Officer Reynolds on his name tag. The second was a younger white woman with cropped blonde hair. Both wore the distinctive uniforms of the airport security division. What seems to be the problem? Officer Reynolds asked, addressing Margaret. Before she could answer, Karen launched into her version of events. These people are harassing me about my seat, she said, gesturing dismissively toward Zara and Isaiah. The flight attendants are taking their side, and now they're threatening to remove me from the flight just because I want to sit by the window. I'm being discriminated against. Officer Reynolds' expression remained neutral as he turned to Margaret. Ma'am, could you explain the situation from the airline's perspective? Margaret explained calmly, these passengers, she indicated Zara and Isaiah, have assigned seats 12A and 12B. They've provided their boarding passes confirming this. Ms. Whitfield is sitting in seat 12A but is actually assigned to seat 17C. She's refusing to move to her assigned seat despite multiple requests. I see, Officer Reynolds nodded. May I see everyone's boarding passes, please? Isaiah promptly produced both his and Zara's boarding passes. Karen once again began searching through her bag without producing anything. As Officer Reynolds examined the Washington's boarding passes, a flicker of recognition crossed his face as he read Isaiah's name. Washington, are you Isaiah Washington, the attorney who worked on the Simpson transportation discrimination case? Isaiah nodded. Yes, that's me. My cousin Derek was one of the plaintiffs in that class action, Officer Reynolds said. You did good work there. Karen immediately seized on this exchange. See? This is exactly what I'm talking about. They all know each other. This is a setup. The female officer, whose name tag read Officer Chen, stepped forward. Ma'am, no one is setting you up. We just need to see your boarding pass. I can't find it right now, Karen insisted. But I've been flying with this airline for 20 years. I always get a window seat. Officer Reynolds turned to Jasmine. Can you verify her assigned seat in your system? Jasmine nodded, pulling out her tablet. Karen Whitfield, seat 17C. It's an aisle seat in regular economy, not premium. That's a mistake, Karen insisted. Call my husband, Douglas Whitfield. He'll explain everything. He's a major investor in this airline. Ma'am, your husband's position doesn't change your seat assignment, Officer Chen explained patiently. The seat assignments are clear. You need to move to your assigned seat so the flight can depart. I want to speak to your supervisor, Karen demanded, crossing her arms. I'm not moving, and I'm not leaving. Officer Reynolds spoke into his radio, requesting a supervisor. Meanwhile, the delay had extended to almost an hour. Passengers were becoming increasingly vocal about their frustration. Some of us have connections to make. This is absolutely ridiculous. Just move her already. Within minutes, Security Supervisor Captain James Wilson arrived. He was a white man in his 50s with a military bearing and a no-nonsense expression. "What's the situation?" he asked briskly. Officer Reynolds summarized the events while Karen interrupted repeatedly, attempting to present herself as the victim. When she mentioned her husband's name and influence for the fourth time, Captain Wilson held up his hand. "Ma'am, I don't care if your husband owns the entire airline. The law applies equally to everyone on this aircraft. You have three options: move to your assigned seat, voluntarily deplane, or be removed from the aircraft. Which will it be?" Karen's face flushed with anger. "You can't speak to me that way. Do you know who I am?" "Yes, ma'am." "You're a passenger who's disrupting the flight and delaying everyone on board," Captain Wilson replied evenly. "Your choice, please. Assigned seat, voluntary deplaning, or removal." Karen pulled out her phone again. "I'm calling Douglas right now. He'll have all of your jobs." As she dialed, Jasmine approached with news from the airline's ground operations. "Captain Reynolds asked me to inform you that this delay has already cost the airline over $20,000. We're at risk of crew timing out if we don't depart soon." Captain Wilson nodded. "Understood." Karen's call connected. "Douglas?" "Yes, it's me again. Now they have security here threatening to drag me off the plane." She put the phone on speaker. "Tell them who you are." An irritated male voice came through the speaker. "This is Douglas Whitfield, CEO of Whitfield Capital Partners. We're a significant investor in your airline, and my wife is a premium member. Whatever this situation is, I suggest you resolve it in her favor immediately, or there will be serious consequences for your airline's next funding round." Captain Wilson remained unimpressed. "Mr. Whitfield, this is Captain James Wilson, Airport Security. Your wife is sitting in another passenger's assigned seat and refusing to move to her own seat. This is disrupting the flight and causing significant delays. As a businessman, I'm sure you understand the costs involved." "I don't care about costs," Douglas Whitfield snapped. "My wife gets what she wants. That's how this works." "Not today, sir," Captain Wilson replied. "Airport security doesn't answer to airline investors. We enforce federal aviation regulations. Your wife has one more chance to comply voluntarily before we remove her from the aircraft." "You wouldn't dare!" Douglas shouted through the phone. "Sir, we absolutely would," Captain Wilson assured him. "And if she resists, she'll be facing federal charges for interfering with a flight crew. Is that what you want?" The line went silent for a moment. Then Douglas spoke again, his tone slightly moderated. "Karen, just take their stupid first-class upgrade and be done with it." "There is no upgrade offer on the table anymore," Captain Wilson clarified. "She either moves to her assigned seat, 17C, or she leaves the aircraft." "This is outrageous!" Karen shouted, suddenly aware that her usual tactics weren't working. "You'll be hearing from our attorneys." Captain Wilson nodded to Officers Reynolds and Chen. "Ms. Whitfield, this is your final opportunity to move voluntarily to your assigned seat. What's your decision?" Karen's eyes darted around the cabin, searching for sympathy or support. Finding none, she doubled down. "I'm not moving. This is my seat." "Very well," Captain Wilson said with a sigh. "Ms. Whitfield, you are being removed from this flight for failure to comply with crew instructions. Please gather your belongings and come with us." "I will not," Karen declared, gripping the armrests tightly. Captain Wilson nodded to the officers. "Proceed with removal." "Don't touch me!" Karen shrieked as Officers Reynolds and Chen moved toward her. I know my rights. Ma'am, you're only making this worse for yourself, Officer Reynolds said calmly. Please stand up and exit the aircraft voluntarily. Karen's knuckles whitened as she gripped the armrests even tighter. I'm not going anywhere. This is assault. Nearly every passenger had their phones out now, recording what had become an internet-worthy meltdown. The teenage boy in seat 12C had long since moved to another available seat, distancing himself from the spectacle. Ma'am, this is your absolute final warning, Captain Wilson stated. Stand up and walk off this aircraft, or we will physically remove you. Karen's response was to begin screaming at the top of her lungs. Help! I'm being attacked. They're singling me out because I'm a single white female. Discrimination. Captain Wilson nodded to the officers. Remove her. With practiced efficiency, Officers Reynolds and Chen positioned themselves on either side of Karen. Officer Reynolds carefully worked to loosen her grip on the left armrest while Officer Chen did the same on the right. Karen continued screaming and flailing, making their job as difficult as possible. Stop resisting, Officer Chen instructed firmly. You're only making this worse for yourself. After several minutes of careful maneuvering to avoid injury to anyone involved, they managed to extract Karen from the seat. As they guided her into the aisle, she went limp, forcing them to essentially carry her. This is police brutality, she yelled, though the officers were being extraordinarily gentle with her. I want everyone to see what they're doing to me. As she was being escorted past Isaiah, Karen suddenly lunged toward him. This is all your fault. You think you're so special with your fancy degrees and assigned seats. I'll make sure you never fly again. Isaiah continued recording calmly, capturing every moment of her tirade. All of this because you wouldn't sit in your assigned seat, he remarked quietly. You'll be hearing from my lawyers. Karen shouted as the officers steadied her and continued moving her toward the exit. I'm going to sue this airline. I'm going to sue you personally. As Karen was finally escorted out of the main cabin and into the jetway, a spontaneous round of applause broke out among the passengers. Several people called out encouragement to Zara and Isaiah. Way to stand your ground. Thank you for not giving in to that nonsense. Some people think rules don't apply to them. Jasmine quickly approached Zara and Isaiah. Dr. Washington, Mr. Washington, please take your seats. Captain Reynolds has ordered a security inspection of the aircraft before we can depart, which is standard procedure after a removal. Does that mean we need to deplane? Zara asked, finally able to slide into her window seat, seat 12A, which still felt warm from Karen's occupation. I'm afraid so, Jasmine confirmed. Everyone will need to exit the aircraft temporarily while security conducts their inspection. But I promise we'll protect your seats. Captain Reynolds' voice came over the intercom. Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. Due to the security incident we just experienced, all passengers will need to deplane temporarily while a security sweep is conducted. Please take your personal belongings with you. We anticipate this will take approximately 30 minutes. We apologize for the continued delay and thank you for your patience. A collective groan went up from the cabin as passengers gathered their items. The deplaning process was orderly but tense, with many passengers visibly frustrated by the additional delay. As Zara and Isaiah moved toward the exit, they received mixed reactions from fellow travelers. Some nodded in solidarity or offered words of support. You guys did the right thing. Sorry you had to go through that. Some people are just impossible. Others were less supportive, muttering as they passed. Was it really worth delaying the whole flight? Could have just taken the first-class seats and been done with it. Making everything about race these days. Back in the terminal, Zara and Isaiah found a quiet corner away from the crowded gate area. Are you okay? Isaiah asked, taking her hand. Zara exhaled slowly. I don't know. Part of me wishes we had just taken different seats to avoid all this. But then she wins, Isaiah finished her thought. And the next black passengers who board get the same treatment, or worse. Exactly. Zara squeezed his hand. Some anniversary trip, huh? It's certainly memorable already. Isaiah attempted a smile. Question is, do we still want to go? We could walk away right now, book a different flight, different airline. Zara considered this for a moment, then straightened her shoulders. No. We've waited 10 years for this trip. I'm not letting Karen Whitfield or anyone else take Paris away from us. As they discussed their options, they could see airport security escorting Karen through the terminal. She was still creating a scene, demanding to speak to airline executives and threatening lawsuits against everyone involved. Several passengers were surreptitiously recording her continued meltdown on their phones. Isaiah's phone buzzed with a notification. The video's already on Twitter, he said, showing Zara the screen. Someone titled it, Karen Gets Kicked Off Flight After Stealing Black Woman's Seat. It's getting shares. Great, Zara sighed. Just what I wanted for our anniversary. Social media fame. At least the video shows exactly what happened, Isaiah pointed out. No ambiguity about who was in the wrong. True, Zara nodded. But you know how these stories get twisted. They watched as Karen was escorted into a private security office, still gesticulating wildly and demanding to speak to someone in authority. Isaiah's phone rang, his law partner, Marcus. Isaiah, I just got your text. What's happening? Are you okay? Isaiah briefly explained the situation. Document everything, Marcus advised. This is textbook discriminatory treatment. The airline will want to settle this quickly and quietly. That's not necessarily what we want, Isaiah replied, glancing at Zara. We just wanted our seats and our vacation. Well, now you've got a viral video and potentially a major case, Marcus pointed out. I'm already getting calls from reporters asking if you're our Isaiah Washington. After ending the call, Isaiah turned to Zara. This is getting bigger than we anticipated. Story of our lives, Zara replied with a wry smile. An airline representative in a crisp uniform approached them. Dr. and Mr. Washington. I'm Regional Manager David Chin. On behalf of Air Transatlantic, I want to personally apologize for your experience today. 2 hours after the original departure time, the passengers of Air Transatlantic Flight 207 finally began reboarding. The mood was subdued, the initial excitement of travel dampened by the extended delay and dramatic events. Security personnel were visibly present during the boarding process, creating an atmosphere more reminiscent of a high-security facility than a routine flight. Zara and Isaiah made their way down the jetway, both physically and emotionally drained from the confrontation. As they approached the aircraft door, they were greeted by Captain Reynolds himself. Dr. and Mr. Washington, he said, extending his hand. I want to personally welcome you aboard and apologize again for what you experienced earlier. Thank you, Captain, Isaiah replied, shaking his hand. We appreciate your handling of the situation. As they moved into the cabin, they noticed the atmosphere had changed significantly. Flight attendants who had previously been indifferent were now attentive and solicitous. Bradley, who had initially suggested they move seats, avoided eye contact completely. When they reached row 12, Jasmine was waiting for them. Your seats, as promised, she said with a warm smile. We've prepared them specially. Their seats had been fitted with upgraded pillows and blankets, typically reserved for first class. A bottle of champagne sat on Isaiah's seat with a handwritten note, with our deepest apologies and best wishes for your anniversary. The crew of at 207. This isn't necessary, Zara said quietly to Jasmine. I know, Jasmine replied. But we wanted to do something. What happened wasn't right. As they settled into their rightfully reclaimed seats, David Chen, the regional manager who had approached them in the terminal, appeared beside their row. Dr. and Mr. Washington, I wanted to inform you personally that we've upgraded you both to our first-class cabin for your return flight next week. It's the least we can do. That's very generous, Isaiah acknowledged. But what we'd really prefer is assurance that your airline will review its training protocols to prevent situations like this in the future. Chen nodded solemnly. Those discussions are already underway, I assure you. Today's incident has been escalated to the highest levels of our organization. As other passengers continued boarding, many slowed as they passed row 12, some offering supportive comments or apologetic smiles for not speaking up earlier. Others still threw resentful glances, clearly blaming them for the delay rather than Karen's behavior. Once everyone was seated, Captain Reynolds' voice came over the intercom. Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. I want to thank you for your extraordinary patience today. We experienced an unfortunate disruption to our normal operations, but I'm pleased to report we're now ready for departure. Our estimated flying time to Paris remains at 7 hours and 45 minutes. The flight attendants will be providing complimentary beverages to all passengers once we reach cruising altitude as a small token of our appreciation for your understanding today. As the aircraft finally pushed back from the gate, nearly 2 hours behind schedule, Zara's phone buzzed with an incoming text. It was from her colleague at the hospital. You're going viral. Call me when you land. Attached was a link to a Twitter thread with the video of Karen's removal, already at several 100,000 views. The comments were a predictable mix of support, criticism, and everything in between. Isaiah leaned over to see the screen. Well, so much for our quiet anniversary getaway, he murmured. We knew what we were doing when we stood our ground, Zara replied, powering off her phone as instructed for takeoff. The aircraft taxied to the runway and finally lifted into the sky, leaving behind the drama on the ground, at least physically. As they reached cruising altitude, the tension that had held Zara rigid for hours finally began to ease. She leaned her head against Isaiah's shoulder. 10 years together, and we're still facing the same battles, she said softly. Isaiah took her hand. But we face them together. And we win them together. The champagne was eventually opened, and despite the circumstances, they toasted to their anniversary. Several passengers from nearby rows stopped by to offer their support or share their own stories of discrimination while traveling. An elderly black woman paused by their row on her way to the lavatory. I saw what happened, she said quietly. When I was your age, I would have been too afraid to stand up like you did. Things are changing, slowly but surely. Midway through the flight, as most passengers were trying to sleep, Jasmine stopped by their row. I thought you might want to know, she whispered. Karen Whitfield was arrested in the terminal. Apparently, she assaulted one of the security officers after they took her to the office. That's unfortunate, Isaiah said diplomatically. Is it though? Jasmine raised an eyebrow with a hint of satisfaction. Anyway, I wanted to thank you both. Flight crews deal with entitled passengers all the time, but rarely does anyone call them out so effectively. After she moved on to attend to other passengers, Zara turned to Isaiah. I never expected our anniversary trip to turn into a referendum on race relations in air travel. Life has a way of putting us exactly where we need to be, Isaiah replied philosophically. Maybe this is where we were meant to make a difference. As the flight continued eastward over the Atlantic, the weight of the day's events settled around them. What should have been the joyful beginning of a long-awaited celebration had transformed into something entirely different, something that felt simultaneously burdensome and important. Whatever happens when we land, Zara said, taking Isaiah's hand, whatever comes of the videos and the social media storm, I'm glad we stood our ground. Isaiah nodded. Me too. Some battles are worth fighting, even when they interrupt your vacation. As the aircraft began its descent toward Paris in the early morning hours, they knew their anniversary trip had already become something neither of them had anticipated. Rather than simply celebrating their past, they had taken a stand that might help shape someone else's future. The Parisian morning greeted Zara and Isaiah with golden light streaming through tall windows and the distant silhouette of the Eiffel Tower, a view they'd dreamed about for years. But instead of immediately embracing the romance of the City of Light, they found themselves huddled over Isaiah's laptop in their hotel room, watching their airport confrontation unfold across global media platforms. Flight fight, black couple stands ground against seat thief, Isaiah read from one headline. At least that one's somewhat accurate. Zara scrolled through her email on her tablet. I've got messages from 3 different news outlets already. How did they even get my email? The internet is terrifyingly efficient, Isaiah replied, closing the laptop. But we don't have to engage with any of it. We're in Paris. For our anniversary. We can turn off our devices and pretend none of this happened. Before Zara could respond, Isaiah's phone rang, his law partner Marcus calling for the 3rd time since they'd landed. You should probably take that, Zara said. Isaiah answered on speaker. Marcus, we're trying to enjoy our first morning in Paris. I know, Marcus replied, his voice energetic despite the early hour in Atlanta. But you need to understand what's happening. The video has over 5 million views across platforms. #FlightWhileBlack is trending. Every major news outlet is trying to get your statement. And the airline stock took a hit this morning when markets opened. We didn't ask for any of this, Zara interjected. No, but it found you anyway, Marcus countered. Isaiah, the firm's phone is ringing non-stop. This is becoming a major case study in travel discrimination. And there's more, someone identified Karen Whitfield. She's the wife of Douglas Whitfield, who? We know who he is, Isaiah interrupted. She made sure everyone on the plane knew exactly who her husband was. Well, his investment firm is doing damage control. They've issued a statement distancing themselves from her behavior. Apparently, they have significant airline holdings and can't afford the association with discrimination. Isaiah exchanged a look with Zara. What does all this mean for us? It means, Marcus said, that the airline will likely reach out with a significant settlement offer, probably within the next 24 hours. They'll want this to go away quickly. And it means you two have a platform right now, a chance to highlight the everyday discrimination that black travelers face. After ending the call, Zara and Isaiah sat in silence for a moment, the weight of unexpected responsibility settling over their anniversary celebration. What do we do? Zara finally asked. Isaiah took her hand. That's up to us. We could ignore it all, focus on our trip, and let the story burn itself out. Or we could use this moment to shine a light on something that happens to people who don't have our resources or platform. Their discussion was interrupted by a call from the hotel's front desk, informing them that they were being upgraded to the presidential suite, compliments of the management, who had heard about their unfortunate travel experience. By the afternoon, as they attempted to enjoy a sidewalk cafe near the Louvre, they realized they were being recognized. Several tourists approached their table, some offering support, others asking for selfies, as if they were celebrities rather than 2 professionals trying to celebrate their marriage milestone. This is surreal, Zara murmured after the 3rd interruption. All because we insisted on sitting in our assigned seats. All because a white woman couldn't accept that we belonged in premium seating, Isaiah corrected gently. That evening, an email arrived from Air Transatlantic's legal department, requesting a conference call to discuss the unfortunate events and reach an amicable resolution. Attached was a preliminary settlement offer that included significant monetary compensation, lifetime premium status, and a formal apology. They're scared, Isaiah observed. This is moving faster than most discrimination cases I've handled. What would you advise a client in our position? Zara asked. Isaiah thought for a moment. I'd tell them to consider what justice looks like to them. Is it compensation? Is it systemic change? Is it public acknowledgement of wrongdoing? And then negotiate accordingly. As they pondered their response, messages continued pouring in, from colleagues, friends, and strangers. Among them was an email from a black flight attendant union representative, thanking them for bringing attention to discriminatory dynamics that flight crews often witnessed but felt powerless to address. There was also a message from a family who had been on their flight, a mother and father with 2 young children who had been seated several rows behind them. "Our children saw everything," the mother wrote. "They asked why the angry lady wouldn't move and why nobody helped you at first. Thank you for showing them what courage looks like." Over the next several days, as they tried to balance enjoying Paris with managing the unexpected spotlight, the story continued evolving. Karen Whitfield had been formally charged with assault against a security officer. Her husband's investment firm had announced she no longer represented them in any capacity. And the airline had issued a public statement condemning discrimination and announcing a comprehensive review of their training protocols. 1 week into their 2-week stay, Isaiah received a call from Captain Reynolds. "Mr. Washington," the captain said after preliminaries, "I wanted to let you know that your stand has had an impact within our company. There's been a memo from the CEO mandating additional training for all flight crews specifically addressing unconscious bias in conflict resolution. It's small, but it's a start." By the end of their first week in Paris, a decision crystallized for both of them. Over dinner at a small bistro in Montmartre, far from the tourist crowds, they drafted their response to the airline settlement offer. "We want more than compensation," Zara said as Isaiah typed. "We want structural change, transparent reporting of discrimination complaints, revised training for all staff, clear protocols for handling similar situations in the future. And we want the settlement funds directed toward establishing a foundation," Isaiah added, "to provide legal support for travelers experiencing discrimination." When they sent their counterproposal, they included a name for their planned foundation, Dignity in Transit. Their final days in Paris were punctuated by calls with attorneys, interviews they selectively granted to journalists committed to telling the full story, and continued recognition by strangers. But they also found moments of the anniversary celebration they had originally planned: quiet walks along the Seine, a private dinner at the Eiffel Tower, mornings spent in each other's arms pretending the outside world didn't exist. "We should probably extend our stay," Isaiah suggested as their scheduled departure approached. "Give things time to settle down back home." Zara contacted her colleagues who had covered her shifts, arranging for an additional week away. The hospital administration, aware of the public relations implications, readily approved her extended absence. On what would have been their final night in Paris, they received confirmation that the airline had accepted most of their counterproposal terms. The formal announcement would be made the following week. "So," Isaiah said as they stood on their hotel balcony, looking out at the Paris skyline, "not exactly the anniversary trip we planned." "No," Zara agreed, leaning into his embrace. "It's become something else entirely. Something important. Dignity in transit," Isaiah mused. "Our unexpected legacy. Who would have thought," Zara said, "that standing up for a window seat would lead to all this?" They stood in comfortable silence, watching the lights of Paris shimmer in the evening darkness, contemplating how a moment of conflict had transformed into a movement for change. 6 months after their eventful flight to Paris, Zara and Isaiah Washington stood on a small stage in the conference room of their law firm, surrounded by supporters, media representatives, and airline executives. A banner behind them proclaimed the official launch of the Dignity in Transit Foundation. "When we boarded that flight to Paris 6 months ago," Isaiah addressed the gathered crowd, "we were simply a couple celebrating our 10th wedding anniversary. We had no idea that insisting on our assigned seats would catalyze a national conversation about dignity in travel." Zara stepped forward to continue. "As a black woman who has spent my career in medicine, often being the only person who looks like me in the operating room, I've learned that small stands for dignity accumulate into lasting change. What happened to us happens to travelers of color every day, usually without cameras recording or viral videos resulting. The journey from that confrontational flight to this moment had been intense and unexpected. After returning from their extended stay in Paris, they had worked tirelessly to transform their experience into meaningful action. The settlement with the airline, which remained confidential in its financial details, had provided the seed funding for their foundation." At the podium, Zara gestured toward a screen displaying the foundation's website and mission statement. "Dignity in Transit will provide 3 essential services: legal support for travelers experiencing discrimination, educational resources for both travelers and transportation companies, and advocacy for policy changes that ensure equal treatment for all. In the months following the incident, the ripple effects had continued to spread. Karen Whitfield's court case had concluded with a plea agreement requiring community service, a fine, and mandatory sensitivity training. Her husband, Douglas Whitfield, had filed for divorce shortly after the incident went viral, publicly stating that her actions did not reflect the values of his family or business. The airline had followed through on its commitments, implementing new training protocols for all staff. Jasmine, the flight attendant who had stood by them during the confrontation, had been promoted to lead the airline's new diversity initiatives. Even Bradley, the flight attendant who had initially suggested Zara and Isaiah move seats, had reached out with a lengthy apology after completing the new sensitivity training program. "We never set out to become the faces of this issue," Isaiah continued at the podium. "But when the moment called for a stand, we couldn't turn away. And we've been humbled by how many people have shared their own stories with us since then." In the audience sat Captain Reynolds, who had taken early retirement from the airline but had accepted a position on the Foundation's advisory board. Beside him was Marcus, Isaiah's law partner, whose firm had now established a dedicated practice area focusing on transportation discrimination cases. "Our Foundation's first initiative," Zara announced, "is a nationwide survey of air travelers of color, documenting their experiences and creating the first comprehensive dataset on discrimination in air travel. Knowledge is the first step toward accountability." As they continued outlining the Foundation's plans, Isaiah couldn't help reflecting on the journey that had brought them here. What began as a simple insistence on assigned seating had transformed into a movement that was already creating tangible change in airline policies across the industry. After the formal presentation concluded and they moved into the reception area, Zara was approached by a young black woman in a medical student's white coat. "Dr. Washington," the student began nervously, "I'm Amara Johnson, second year at Emory. I just wanted to thank you. When I saw what happened to you, a successful black female surgeon standing her ground, it gave me strength during a really tough rotation where I was being undermined daily. You showed me it's possible to demand respect without compromising your dignity." Moments like these had become increasingly common in both their lives. Zara's hospital had promoted her to department head, recognizing that her newfound public platform could help attract diverse talent to their pediatric surgery program. Isaiah's expertise in discrimination law was now sought after by major transportation companies looking to proactively address their policies and training. Later that evening, as they drove home from the Foundation launch, they received a call from the White House Office of Public Engagement, inviting them to participate in a forum on transportation equality the following month. "Remember when our biggest concern was making our dinner reservation at that restaurant by the Seine?" Zara mused as Isaiah ended the call. "I do," Isaiah smiled. "And I also remember the moment on that plane when you refused to back down. That's when I knew this wasn't just about us anymore." When they arrived home, a package awaited them, a gift from Captain Reynolds. Inside was a framed photograph of the Paris skyline at sunset, with a note, "Some battles choose us. Thank you for showing us all how to fight them with dignity. Enjoy the view you earned." 2 weeks later, they found themselves boarding another flight, this time to a legal conference where Isaiah would be delivering a keynote address on transportation equity. As they settled into their seats, they noticed the subtle but unmistakable recognition in the flight crew's eyes. One of the flight attendants quietly approached. "Mr. and Dr. Washington. I just completed the new training program your case inspired. I wanted to thank you personally. It's changed how I see my role on this aircraft." As the plane taxied for takeoff, a passenger across the aisle leaned over. "Aren't you the couple from that viral video? The seat thing?" Zara nodded with a small smile, prepared for either criticism or support. "My daughter wrote a paper about you for her social studies class," the woman continued. "About standing up for what's right even when it's inconvenient. Got an A." After takeoff, as they flew high above the clouds, Isaiah took Zara's hand. "So, about that anniversary celebration we never quite got to have properly, Yes. Zara raised an eyebrow. I was thinking, for our 11th, maybe somewhere without commercial flights. A road trip, perhaps? Zara laughed, a full, genuine laugh that released months of tension. Deal. Though I'm not sure we'd fare any better with rental car agents. True, Isaiah conceded. But at least they can't kick us off in mid-journey. As the flight continued smoothly, they reflected on how standing firm in one moment had created waves that continued to ripple outward. Their anniversary trip had indeed changed their lives, but in ways neither could have predicted when they first boarded that fateful flight 6 months earlier. In their correct seats, holding hands above the clouds, they had become not just passengers but unwitting ambassadors for change, proof that dignity, when insisted upon, could transform not just a single confrontation but an entire industry's approach to equality. What do you think about Zara and Isaiah's journey? Have you ever witnessed or experienced discrimination while traveling? Did their story inspire you to stand your ground in difficult situations? Please share your thoughts in the comments, and if this story moved you, hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more powerful stories of resilience and justice. Thank you for joining us today, and remember, sometimes the most important journeys aren't about the destinations but about the dignity we maintain along the way. Standing up for what's right isn't always convenient or comfortable, but it's often necessary for progress. Zara and Isaiah's experience shows that dignity isn't negotiable, even in seemingly small matters like airplane seating. When they refused to accept discrimination disguised as problem-solving, they sparked a movement larger than themselves. Their story demonstrates how individual courage can lead to systemic change, transforming personal indignity into collective empowerment. The lesson isn't just about discrimination in travel, but about how institutions often expect marginalized people to compromise their rights for others' comfort. By documenting their experience and channeling it into meaningful action, Zara and Isaiah turned a moment of conflict into a lasting legacy of change. Remember that justice sometimes requires standing firm when it would be easier to step aside. Your boundaries matter, your dignity is non-negotiable, and sometimes the most important journey is the one toward equal treatment for all. What moment in your life required you to stand up for your dignity, even when others expected you to back down? Has traveling ever put you in situations where you faced discrimination or unfair treatment? Share your experiences in the comments below. Your story might inspire others to stand their ground. If this journey of courage and transformation resonated with you, please hit that like button to help more people discover it. Subscribe to our channel for more powerful true stories about everyday heroes challenging injustice, and share this video with someone who might need encouragement to stand firm in their own dignity today. Thank you for traveling with us through Zara and Isaiah's powerful journey. Remember that sometimes the smallest stands for justice create the biggest waves of change.